Today I'm going to show you how to make an apple pie with a lattice top. So you're going to need 300 grams of plain flour, 150 grams of butter, 110 grams of caster sugar and 3 large egg yolks for the pastry. So you're going to stir your sugar into your plain flour and then add in your butter. Your butter can be softened a little bit, and then you're going to cut your butter into small pieces in your flour, and this is starting the process of shortening. So you're then going to rub your butter in, so you are rubbing the butter so that it coats each of those starch grains and it gives it a waterproof coating, and this is called shortening, and it stops the development of gluten and gives us that crumbly texture that we know for pastry, okay, rather than a tough texture. So we do need to make sure that it's all rubbed in well. It might take you a while, and you're looking for that golden crumb and a breadcrumb-like texture. So you might just need to tap your bowl and any big bits of butter will come up to the top. It's an enriched dough, so we're going to use egg yolks to bind it. So we're doing a pâté sucre and making a sweet pastry. If you're going to use your egg whites, make sure that you put them in a clean, grease-free bowl. If you're going to do something like meringues with them, and then you're going to stir your egg yolks in, and this will bind your ingredients together. There might not be enough liquid, so you can add between 2 and 4 tablespoons of cold water to just help bind it together. So you can see that I'm trying to squeeze it together, but it's not quite coming together. So I'm just going to add some water to help with that binding of our ingredients together. And then this should come together into a ball of dough. So you're just going to squeeze it, and then you might just need to knead it lightly. You don't want to knead it too much because that will develop the gluten, and we're just bringing it together, so wanting it to make it a smooth dough, so it's just bringing it all together to prevent it from cracking. You're then going to split it into 2/3 for the base and 1/3 for the top, and just roll it in some cling film or some greaseproof paper, and roll it out into a circle so that it will fill your tray to about 1/2 centimetre thick. If you do it in cling film, it stops it from sticking to your worktop. Because it's got the egg in it, it makes it a bit more difficult to handle. And then this is going to go into the fridge to just rest. We then need to prepare our apples. So I am using Bramley apples, which are a cooking apple, and they will stew down a lot better and break down, unlike eating apples. So you're just going to peel, and then you're going to cut the core out of it and then chop it into chunks and place it into a pan where we're going to stew it before we actually start baking it in our pie. You also need to make sure that you have rolled out the top in the same way that you rolled out the base. So this then goes onto the cooker with a tablespoon of water and 2 tablespoons or 50 grams of caster sugar for around 5 minutes on a medium heat, until it stews down and it's tender. You're then going to line your pastry dish, so make sure that you preheated your oven before you start doing this, and then line your pastry dish with the 2/3 of your pastry, trimming off around the edge so you're leaving a bit of an overhang, and filling any gaps with any of the remainder of the pastry to make sure that there are no holes. Fill your dish with your apple, your stewed apple, which is softened down, and then we're going to prepare our lid. So take your pastry out of the fridge, and then you're going to cut it into 1 centimetre strips. I probably should have worked on making it more round before I started, and then this is going to be used to create the lattice. So if you get yourself a piece of greaseproof paper, you can then create your lattice, which is a weave, onto the greaseproof paper and then flip it onto your pie. Okay, so taking the middle piece out, the longest piece, and then laying it down, and then taking alternate pieces and then laying them out next to each other. So every other piece across in the position that you have taken them out of, because that will then fit across your pie dish. You're then going to fold back alternate ones, and then take the centre one that's left, and then keep on folding alternate strips of pastry back so that we're creating that weave. So our pastry should go under, over, like you would do with a basket. So we have then got our last bit of pastry, and then you do the opposite side. So always making sure that the longer ones are going into the centre, so you're still keeping that shape of the circle. And then once you're finished, you can then lift up your grease proof, and you're going to wet around the outside of the pastry case first, just so it sticks, so it's creating a bit of glue. And then you're going to lift your lattice and flip it over, and then you can just make sure that it's all attached properly, and then trim off around the edge, and then you're left with a perfect lattice which is covering your pie. If you try and do it on a hot pie, it will melt the pastry, so it just makes it a little bit more difficult to do. And then you're going to glaze it with, I'm just using some of the leftover egg white from before, and then sprinkle over some caster sugar, and then that bakes in the oven for about 25 to 30 minutes until your pastry is golden brown and cool.